They just got up and walked out. On my 60th birthday, the cake sat there untouched. My son kept his eyes glued to the floor, and my daughter-in-law smirked like she'd just won the lottery. I stayed calm, deadly calm. What she didn't know yet was that this house belonged to me. And very soon, her card wasn't going to work anymore. The birthday cake sat untouched on the heavy oak dining table when my daughter-in-law Brenda pointedly checked her watch. "Come on, Kevin, we need to get moving," she said, standing up abruptly and giving my son's sleeve a sharp tug. "We seriously have better things to do today than sit around here." Kevin shot me a quick, apologetic, totally helpless look, but he didn't dare cross his wife. He mumbled a quiet apology, grabbed his jacket from the coat rack, and followed her out the front door without another word. On my 60th birthday, I was left completely alone in the house I had worked so hard to maintain after my husband passed away. I didn't scream and I didn't cry. I just sat there, in the absolute silence, watching their car pull out of the empty driveway through the window. Brenda thought she could push me around because I was a quiet widow who rarely raised her voice. She had completely forgotten that this entire house was in my name, and the savings account they skimmed from every month belonged to me too. 2 years ago, Kevin hit a massive financial rough patch with his auto repair shop, so I set up a joint authorization on my secondary account to help him out. Since then, Brenda had been using that debit card shamelessly for her personal shopping sprees, treating it like her own hard-earned paycheck. I cleared the table carefully, washing the fine china cups by hand, feeling a deep, cold clarity wash over me. Anyone who crossed my boundaries like that instantly forfeited their right to my generosity. No debate required. That very evening, I sat down at my computer and logged into my online banking. With a few deliberate clicks, I canceled the extra card I had given Kevin and changed the PINs on every single account. There was no big dramatic scene, just the quiet, rhythmic clicking of the keyboard in the midnight silence of the house. After that, I headed down to the basement with a purpose, grabbed my late husband's old toolbox, and found the right screwdriver. Tomorrow morning, those two were in for a wake-up call they wouldn't forget anytime soon. I went to bed and slept better than I had in months. The next morning, at exactly 8 o'clock, my phone started buzzing on the kitchen counter right on cue. Kevin's name flashed on the screen. I picked it up, keeping my voice entirely steady and composed. "Mom, something's wrong with the card," Kevin said, sounding panicked. "Brenda's at the grocery store checkout right now, and the machine keeps saying it's invalid." "That's because it is. I permanently revoked your access last night," I replied, casually taking a sip of my hot coffee. "But why would you do that?" "We desperately need that money for our groceries for the week," he cried out. In the background, I could hear Brenda's shrill voice throwing a tantrum. "If you have better things to do than celebrate my 60th birthday, I'm sure you can find a better source of income," I said and hung up. I didn't bother waiting for an explanation. As far as I was concerned, there was nothing left to discuss about finances. Brenda thought she could socially isolate me while using my money to fund her high-end lifestyle. Ever since their wedding, the couple had been living completely rent-free on the top floor of my house, which was a separate apartment with its own balcony. They didn't pay a dime in rent, only a small token contribution toward utilities, which they usually forgot to pay anyway. I threw on my cardigan, walked into the hallway, and looked at the old connecting door that led to their staircase. Up until now, that door had always been left wide open so Kevin could come down whenever he needed a hand with something. But Brenda had been taking advantage of it, breezing into my kitchen unannounced to raid my pantry. I took the screwdriver I'd set aside the night before and carefully removed the old doorknob from the connecting door. In its place, I installed a heavy-duty deadbolt that required a key. I put the only 2 keys onto my personal keychain. As of today, the upstairs was a completely separate world, and my privacy was officially locked down. It didn't take 30 minutes before heavy, hurried footsteps thudded down the wooden stairs. The doorknob rattled violently. When the door didn't budge an inch, Kevin knocked loudly, clearly baffled by the sudden obstacle. I opened the door just a crack, secured by the brand new security chain, and looked my son dead in the eye. Brenda was standing right behind him, her face flushed with anger, her arms crossed tightly over her chest like a judge about to pass sentence. "Mom, what is this? Why is this locked, and why can't we just come down to the kitchen anymore?" Kevin asked, completely stunned. "Down here is my private residence," I explained matter-of-factly. "And starting today, nobody enters this space without an express invitation from me beforehand." Brenda stepped forward and scoffed. "You can't just lock us out. We live in this house too, you know. You live upstairs entirely rent-free, and that's about to change too if your attitudes don't adjust immediately." I shot back. I slid a piece of paper through the crack in the door. I had written out the new house rules, including official quiet hours, strict recycling guidelines, and the exact dollar amount for monthly utilities due from now on, $250. "Starting the 1st of next month, I expect the utility payment in my account on time, or I'll cut off your access," I added. Brenda let out a bitter laugh. "And what if we just don't pay? You're an old woman, you can't even manage this place by yourself." I looked at her without flinching or showing a single trace of emotion and said very quietly, "Go ahead and try me." I shut the heavy door, turned the deadbolt, and left them standing in the dark stairwell. They had mistaken my years of kindness for weakness, but now they were finding out the hard way who actually held the keys to the castle. Over the next few days, a freezing silence settled over the house, hanging in the air like an invisible wall. Brenda tried to punish me by giving me the total cold shoulder stomping loudly up and down the stairs to make sure I heard her. Kevin looked caught in the crossfire. He avoided all eye contact and actively steered clear of me whenever we were out in the large backyard. I didn't let the hostile atmosphere bother me at all. Instead, I used the time to reset my own routine. I woke up in a great mood, walked down to the local bakery, tended to my yellow roses in the front yard, and met up with my girlfriends. Brenda had secretly hoped I would get lonely and come crawling back apologizing for being cheap. Instead, she had to watch me become happier and more active by the day, while her own lifestyle shriveled up without my bank account backing it. They had to pay for their expensive taste out of their own pockets now, which immediately put a massive dent in their brand-name shopping habits. The Amazon delivery truck stopped dropping off packages every day, and their fancy SUV stayed parked in the driveway a lot more. One afternoon, I looked out the kitchen window and saw Brenda furiously chewing Kevin out while he just hung his head in resignation. She was clearly trying to push him to stand up to me, but he simply had no logical leg to stand on. I knew they would try to hit back in some other way, so I calmly waited for their next move. My preparations were watertight. I had already gone down to the basement and taken photos of the meters to document the exact baseline readings for electricity, gas, and water. If they thought they could waste my utilities out of spite, they were in for a rude awakening. I stayed vigilant, noted every little change, and kept my absolute unshakable peace. On Friday evening, there was another knock at the wooden connecting door, this time much softer, almost hesitant. It was Kevin. I opened it a crack and saw him holding a massive basket overflowing with dirty laundry. "Mom, Brenda says our washing machine upstairs is broken. We need to use yours in the basement," he said pleadingly. The modern washer and dryer in the basement were my personal property, and up until now, they had been doing all their laundry there for free. The laundry room is strictly for my personal use from now on. Kevin, I replied, blocking the doorway. Brenda came rushing down the stairs, planting herself right next to him. This is absolutely ridiculous. It's just laundry, she yelled. It's my washing machine, my expensive electricity, and my water, all of which you've been using without contributing a single thing, I countered calmly. If you need to do laundry, there's a laundromat 2 miles away that's open until 8 every night. Brenda's face contorted with pure rage. You are being so unbelievably selfish. We are your family. You're supposed to damn well help us. Family respects one another, and you both managed to completely forget that on my 60th birthday, I said with total composure. I shut the door in their faces before she could start another screaming match and turn the lock. I heard Brenda kick the drywall upstairs in a fit of rage, but it didn't faze me at all. They had taken the comforts of this house for granted while treating me like hired help. Now they had to learn that every luxury here came with a price tag of basic respect and clear, non-negotiable boundaries. Kevin carried the heavy basket back upstairs in total silence, their footsteps sounding incredibly heavy and defeated. On Saturday morning, I rented a small, practical cargo van and drove down to Home Depot to pick up a few things. I bought a heavy-duty shelving system for the basement to get all my storage organized and neatly arranged. When I got back, I saw Kevin sitting alone on the patio, staring depressingly into an empty coffee mug. Brenda was nowhere to be seen. She had probably driven into the city to escape the tension at the house. I started unloading the heavy boxes of shelving by myself without asking Kevin for help or even looking his way. He eventually shifted uncomfortably, walked slowly over to the van and said, "Let me get that, Mom. It's too heavy for you." "I'm doing just fine on my own, but thanks for the offer," I replied shortly, picking up the first box and walking right past him. It was important to show him that I didn't need his help and that I wasn't dependent on him for anything. He just stood by the van, completely lost, clearly stung by my cold detachment. It wasn't anger, it was just pure distance. His passivity had deeply hurt me for years, but that chapter of emotional expectation was officially and permanently closed. I built the new shelves in the basement at my own pace, sorted my tools, and genuinely enjoyed the productive physical work. Not a single sound came from upstairs. The apartment felt completely dead and drained of energy without my financial life support. That evening, I cooked myself a simple but excellent dinner and curled up in my armchair with a new book. They had finally realized that their go-to weapon, the silent treatment, had zero power over me. Instead, it was only isolating them. My independence was my strongest asset, and with every passing day, I used it with more confidence and peace. It was a rainy Tuesday when I found the first handwritten note from Kevin on my kitchen table, slipped secretly under the connecting door. He wrote that his shop was barely breaking even and that there was no way they could afford the new utility fees next month. He begged me for a face-to-face chat, just the two of us, without Brenda, because she was too worked up over the whole situation. I set the note aside, pulled out my organized financial folders, and waited patiently until he got home from work that evening. When I heard his footsteps in the hall, I unlocked the door and motioned for him to come in. He sat down at the kitchen table, staring down at his calloused hands, looking years older than he actually was. "Mom, I am so sorry about your birthday. Brenda was just incredibly stressed out that day," he began, but I raised my hand to stop him. "I don't want to hear any more hollow excuses, Kevin. From here on out, I'm only interested in the hard facts regarding this house," I said calmly. I laid out a detailed spreadsheet covering the last 2 years, which I had meticulously put together on my computer. You've lived here completely rent-free and used my bank account. It adds up to a sum that I have never asked you to pay back. We just don't have the money to pay you monthly rent on top of everything else right now, he whispered, lowering his head in shame. If you can't afford the utilities here, then you'll need to look for a smaller apartment that fits your budget. He looked up at me in shock. He clearly hadn't expected his own mother to be this unyielding. You wouldn't actually throw us out on the street, would you? He asked, his voice trembling. I gently pulled my hand back and said, You have exactly 3 months to find a new place to live. Brenda found out about our conversation immediately, of course, and tried to handle the situation the next day using her usual aggressive tactics. She cornered me in the garden while I was watering the flowers, stepping right into my path with a furious look on her face. You think you're so right, don't you? You're destroying your only son's marriage with your pathological stinginess, she screamed at me. I calmly turned off the garden hose, set the nozzle down, and looked her straight in the eye. A marriage that relies entirely on a widow endinct isn't a very strong marriage to begin with, I replied. You are a bitter, lonely old woman. No wonder your husband left you all alone so early, she hissed viciously. It was a calculated low blow meant to cut me to the core, but the verbal arrow just bounced right off my inner peace. My husband left me this house so I could live here securely and peacefully, not so I could be insulted in my own yard, I said. You two never signed a lease for the upstairs. You live here purely by my grace. Her face went completely pale as it finally clicked that she had absolutely no legal or moral leverage against me. I will make sure Kevin never speaks another word to you for the rest of his life, she threatened, yelling at one last time. That is entirely Kevin's choice. He is a grown man, and it's time he started acting like one, I replied, completely unfazed. I turned around, walked slowly back into the house, and locked the door behind me, leaving her standing there speechless. Her threats were completely empty because they were based on a power she had lost in this house a long time ago. Exactly 2 weeks before the move-out deadline, I saw the first moving boxes being quietly carried down from the upstairs apartment by Kevin. He had finally accepted that I wasn't going to budge and that no amount of whining was going to save him. Brenda didn't help him pack at all. She mostly sat in her car for hours or talked loudly on the phone out on the balcony right above me. I stayed completely out of the process, offering no help, and I didn't cook a single meal for them during that time either. One evening, Kevin stood at my door alone this time without any boxes and asked if he could come in for a minute. He sat down at the familiar kitchen table and said quietly, "We found a small, affordable apartment on the edge of town." That sounds like a very sensible choice, Kevin. It will definitely suit your budget a lot better, I replied, completely free of any bitterness. Brenda is moving back in with her mother for a while. We're taking a break from our relationship, he added, rubbing his tired face. It didn't surprise me that their superficial relationship quickly fractured once my money and the free luxuries of this house were taken out of the equation. I didn't feel a sense of triumph. I just felt a profound sense of relief that a healthy order was returning to my life. You are always welcome to come over for dinner, Kevin, but the rules of this house apply to everyone across the board, I told him. He nodded silently, getting the message. And for the first time in years, he seemed to be taking real responsibility for himself. The lesson was undoubtedly harsh, but it was absolutely necessary to break both of us out of that unhealthy dynamic. The final move was scheduled for the upcoming weekend, and I was genuinely looking forward to the peace and quiet. The large moving truck finally pulled out of the driveway on Sunday morning, and the house instantly fell into a wonderful, peaceful stillness. I walked up the stairs to the top floor, which had been completely cleared out and left surprisingly clean. I opened all the large windows to let the fresh spring air sweep through the rooms, looking around the bright space with a deep sense of freedom. This house was my home again, a safe haven of tranquility, no longer a battleground for disrespect and greed. I decided to remodel the upstairs apartment into a bright studio for my crafts and a cozy guest room for when my old friends came to visit. Kevin called me that very evening to let me know he had settled into his new apartment. His voice sounded significantly more grounded and mature than it had in months, confirming that taking this tough step was the right thing to do. We didn't say a single word about Brenda, nor did we rehash the mistakes of the past. Instead, we just chatted about the weather and how things were going at his shop. Our relationship now had a completely fresh, healthy foundation built on respectful distance and clear, unbreakable boundaries. I hung up the phone with a smile, brewed a fresh cup of herbal tea, and sat out on the patio to watch the sunset. My 60th birthday had been the ultimate turning point, the moment I finally reclaimed my voice and my inner strength. I didn't need loud words or a big, dramatic scene to protect my peace. My actions had spoken for me, and they had cleared the air completely. Life was wonderfully simple again, perfectly ordered and exactly how I wanted my future to be.